Welcome to Mega Nerd Gaming, and today's review is going to be on the first console game I ever had, which is Super Mario Brothers for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Super Mario Brothers was released in October of 1985. Well, it wasn't the first side-scrolling platformer, side-view platforming game. It was one of the first to actually include side-scrolling, which is quite the technological advancement, especially on a home video game system. It was a pack-in game for the NES in North America, and in many cases it would come on combination cartridges later on in the Nintendo's lifespan, including the version I had, which had Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and World Class Track Meet, which was a power pad game. So you had a controller based, the light gun based, and then the power pad game all on the same cartridge. Basically with this game, what you're trying to do, your goal is to go through the Mushroom Kingdom that's been invaded by Bowser and an army of Koopas. You need to go through a series of worlds, and then eventually you'll get to the point where you can rescue Princess Toadstool from the actual Bowser at the end of each level, except for the very last level at the end of each world, which consists of 4 levels. There's a Bowser lookalike, but most of them aren't the actual Bowser. Only the one at the very end of the game is the actual Bowser. For this game, it's one of those games where if you're teaching a class on game design, this would be one of the games that would be under study as a case study on game design class. Up there with Pong and some Doom would be on that list. Games that form the basis of a genre due to the game featuring either exceptional game design or it masters all the basics of a certain genre. You get to move left to right. Once you get past a certain part of the screen, you're no longer able to go back to that part. So as this screen scrolls, the part of the level you've already went through, you can no longer go back to. There's a timer, there's a score, you have lives, you have a few different power-ups, you collect coins. If you get enough coins, you get a free life. And most of the levels are laid out in such a way where this is a very popular game for speedrunning. Given the levels, the controls for the levels, the jumps, the avoiding obstacles and everything become very rhythmic in nature. The music is very catchy, and it's not catchy because it's exceptional music, but it's music that's fitting, and it's very basic fitting music. They didn't go out of their way to try to create anything too complex that actually get in the way of the gameplay. Same thing with the graphics. The art style, once you start looking at individual parts of the graphics on screen, and they are very basic. Let's go ahead and pull up some footage. And I'm not very good at this game, and I was also playing it on an emulator with a controller that is much different than the NES controller. So, not very good at this game. But yeah, as you'll notice if you actually look closely at the levels, you have a hill there that seriously consists of 2 colors. The black outline with a couple of black dots, and then green. It's really almost something like a kid would draw, except with the whole game being done in that type of art style, it's done well enough to convey what each item is, and art style as a whole combined with the gameplay makes a package that overall fits together very well. Now the question is, for these reviews I do, isn't whether or not this was one of the best games at the time, but whether it's how good of a game it is, period. The goal of the reviews is for the scores to be roughly the same 10 years ago and 10 years from now as they are. Had I reviewed this game 10 years ago, and if I review this game 10 years in the future, it should get roughly the same score, with maybe a little bit of variation. But there should be a game that goes from a 5 to a 3 because of technological limitations. Unless something so significant changes with gaming, where this type of game becomes just unplayable because of all the technological advancements, which gives this game simplicity, as well as some of the level design, the secrets, as well as some of the non-intentional ways this game is played, just as speedrunning. This will likely always be a game that has is deemed playable. And it's also, even if we were to eventually get to the point where we have holodecks, there'd still be people out there that would probably have some version of this game on some device that they could play. I did review Super Mario 3, and that is towards the top of the list. It went in the lower part of the 5 out of 5 category. With this game, we were lacking the level of variation. The levels are less complex, and I'd say, well, while the worst level on Mario 1 is better than the worst level on Mario 3, the best levels on Mario 3 are better than the best levels on Mario 1. There aren't really any poorly designed levels on here, or overly frustrating levels, or out of place levels. There's also just not that many levels, nor is there that much variation between the levels. You have the castle, you have the underground, you might have a water level, and you have the just outdoor level with some variation here and there. The gameplay is responsive, and it really does take advantage of the 2-button D-pad combination of the Nintendo. It doesn't require any other actions where you'd have to press multiple buttons, other than the direction you move and then one of the buttons for an action. So, as far as this game goes, it's a timeless classic that everybody should play. Like I said, it is one of the games that should be, if somebody's doing a course, it's a series that takes a bunch of cases of proper game design. This one would be one of the cases I would personally select in the teaching of that course. But with all the other games that have been released since then, people do expect a bit more complexity. I'm not going to hold the rather shallow story of a Nintendo action platformer against the game, given the story, for the most part, is irrelevant. Everything in the game fits the settings. There's nothing that's out of place or interferes. And whether or not he's a plumber or a homeless guy wearing overalls really would make zero difference as far as the game is concerned. Or I guess it could be a homeless plumber and we wouldn't even really know. Never seen him in a home, at least not in this era. But as far as the final score for this game, its simplicity makes it accessible to a lot of people, a lot more than a game like the Call of Duty series, and definitely a lot more people than a more complex game like Combat Arms or Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. The skill level required to enter this game and succeed is much lower than something like Dark Ball or Quake 3 Arena. But at the same time, the game is pretty shallow. It's not something you're going to sit down and play for long periods. It's more complex than a game like Pong, which is also a game that should be studied in how to do game design properly. But there's just not a whole lot here. Like I said, you can be creative and do things like speedrun. I guess you can do a speedrun, no stars. Speedrun, collect all power-ups. Speedrun, kill all monsters. You could make different games out of this game if you wanted to, which adds some replayability to it. But even with that, there's other titles that you could do that with as well. So as far as the score for this game, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Like I said, that's definitely not a bad score. Like I said, it's an all-time classic, and on the list, I am going to put it below Call of Duty 2 and above Solar Jetman. And as far as a game for an average person to play, if I were to say, alright, even though Solar Jetman and Super Mario Brothers are right next to each other on the list with the same score, if somebody were to just pick a random gamer off the street, just out, not knowing whether it's a casual gamer, mobile gamer, or some hardcore gamer, and I were to have to pick a game for them to play that they enjoyed, I'd pick Super Mario Brothers over Solar Jetman, most definitely. But Solar Jetman was a game that took a lot more risks. Dale did some of those risks, but took more risks. Just like games like Anachronox and Call of Duty 2 that are also on that list. So like I said, it's an all-time classic. It's the first console game I had, and it's a game that I could revisit 10 years from now and still enjoy. 20 years from now, I'd still enjoy it. But it's just not... There's just not a whole lot of depth here to keep somebody playing over and over. Nor is there enough depth to say that this game is one of the greatest of all time. Hope you enjoyed the review. Please like, subscribe, and have a great day.